and you'll see distributed around you yard signs. Please take them home and display them proudly.
I want to say a few words about this young man. I met him over a year ago, and I've not been in politics before, and so I have learned from people like Lynn and John and Jim, and I'm looking around the room like Sean has been running for a year. Sean has taught me a lot about this. Larry and the Democracy for America has taught me a lot about this business and helped me understand how I should run and how I can serve. Patrick has been part of that. I have the greatest confidence in him. We brought him on early so he could get his feet on the ground, begin to get organized. He will be your point of contact in this region, and this election will be won by all of us. Okay, it won't be won necessarily on radio, on TV. It will be won by people talking to people across this district. And Patrick is I don't know if we should call him the pivot point or the nexus, or what do you think? What would you like to be?
I would like to be overflown with volunteers.
All right, glad that keeps my thanks. All right. Let me tell you just a couple things that are going on in the race, give you a bit of a state of the race, and then I'd like to take any questions or comments you have. So some big things have happened recently. I think all of you know that Senator Gillibrand has endorsed this race, or will endorse it. And that's important on a couple different levels. I met with her in Washington about 3 weeks ago now. And she said, Mike, I'm going to endorse 10 candidates, 5 on the Senate side, 5 on the House side, 9 women, and you. And I was deeply honored by that, because I've looked at, she is someone we know in this region. She represented us right here. And so the idea is that, with her backing and her support, she brings remarkable wisdom, she brings influence, she brings resources that I think will make a significant difference in this campaign. It's big news for all of us, and I'm very, very pleased to see that. We'll see her on the campaign trail. We'll see her with a formal announcement here in the not-too-distant future. But that's the good kind of things that are happening for us on this campaign. The second is that me? Yes, pardon me. Party foul. Okay. The second thing that you need to know is we are in the red to blue program, which means that this race has the seal of approval from the Democratic Party in Washington saying this is a winnable seat. And they do that very carefully. They look at the candidate, they look at the amount of support that candidate generated in the community, they look at the amount of money raised, they look at the numbers for this district. Okay, keep in mind, this is the most bipartisan district in the country. There's 435 congressional districts, and people right here in New York 21 are most likely to cross party lines. That's been determined as a fact from previous election results. So when you look at people that you're going to talk to about this campaign and about me as a candidate, remember that it's not just Democrats we're talking to. We're talking to independents. We're talking to Republicans who care about this region and who care about this country. So the numbers that are our electoral voting patterns in this district matter. We're the most bipartisan district in the country. We are one of 8 districts in the country where statistically the average Republican and the average Democrat are even. In other words, it's a toss-up. There's only 8 in the country. So we're number 1 in terms of bipartisanship. We are one of 8 in terms of it being a statistical toss-up between the average Democrat and the average Republican. So the idea is that this is winnable. The Democratic Party looks at that and says, okay, we have the right candidate, we have the right year, we have the right district, and they can put their seal of approval on this race. So that means a lot for us, and it will allow us to generate support, not just for me, but for Sean, for all of our other great candidates on the Democratic line. So those are two big things I wanted to share with you if you don't know them already. And I'd be happy to take any questions you may have or any comments. If you have ideas for us that you want to share in this forum, have at it. Yes.
I'm new and I'm gathering a lot of information from
Right.
people I meet. And one man told me that he understood that he would be in favor of increasing the defense budget. So that's something.
I don't think we need to increase the defense budget in this country. What we must do is we must spend defense dollars more carefully, more intelligently, more cost effectively. All right, we especially in this, we're a border district, okay? We have the Canadian border to our north. We have Fort Drum, which is the only Army installation in the Northeast and the largest military installation in the Northeast. And those are things that, you know, I have an obligation when elected to to care for and to treat, you know, in a very responsible way. But we don't need to spend more on defense. We already spend, I think, somewhere on the order of $620 billion. What we need to do is spend our defense dollars more carefully. What I bring to that equation is having spent a career in the Army, having worked at the State Department in foreign policy, I bring an expertise so when the senior military leaders come before Congress and they present their proposals and their ideas and their options, I have the background to ask the right questions and make better decisions. Okay? Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
I know some of your policies, but I would love you to tell everyone how you feel distinguished from Stephanie. Where you feel
Right.
the main differences are, because I think that's what, when you talk to people, you want to
Yeah,
know.
that's a good question. So let me start with experience and judgment. Okay, I have lived a life of leadership. You know, many of you know, Kathy and I both went to West Point. We both served in the U.S. Army. I've commanded many different times. I've been a diplomat for our country. I bring a level of experience, and from experience flows wisdom and judgment. And that's a distinct difference between the two of us as candidates. The others that I would mention is that she consistently votes against the best interests of the North Country. And that you can look in the category of education, you can look at infrastructure, you can look at women's issues, you can look at healthcare. These are things which affect us in the places we live. And if we go down the list of things that Elise Stefanik has voted for or not voted for, that I think is an indictment of her leadership. And so I'll give you one example. People talk about a broken Congress and how it has failed to do what needs to be done. We have something that's happening right now, which I hope is never an issue here, but we have to be cognizant of. Congress went on summer vacation without appropriating money to have a federal response to the Zika crisis. I read this morning that by the end of this year, 1 in 4 people in Puerto Rico will have Zika virus in their system. Think about that for a minute. Think about the health crisis, the health emergency that is coming out, and the Congress left town. Elise Stefanik is a member of the majority in the Congress. They control the agenda. She's close to Paul Ryan. She is influential in that body. They failed to do their job. We have people in South Florida, to include women who are pregnant, who have contracted the Zika virus. So it's not just in Puerto Rico, it's here on the continental United States. You can see I get a little fired up about it. That's a failure to perform on the part of the U.S. Congress, and she must be held accountable. Something less emotional this time, all right?
Oh, okay, yeah, no, but on education and
Yes.
things like that, or so, doesn't it seem like with all the years that have gone by and everything, and all the different things that's happened with education, why can't they come to a conclusion, looking at people as they are, not what they would want them to be, but kids and people as they are? why can't they come up with an idea of turning around and instead of failing anybody, has different levels, 1, 2, and 3, 4. 3 and 4 would be kids that look like they're going to get to high school, but no more or not make it. Those kids, when you realize you have them when they're young, we should be helping them to turn around and know how to deal with things at home, know how to do lawns, know how, and do it well, and how to perform different things, but never fail. No kid should ever fail. I know I failed, but it didn't matter. I've got everything I want, and I've only been around positive people, so I have a positive life every day. That's my advantage. Your real life is who you're around. But with education, it's so sad that we still sit and think it's okay for a kid to fail, and they can't understand why people take their kids out or so because they'd rather do it themselves and stuff like that. These kids should be in school learning something, but learning something for what their brain has, not what the person is, but what they can take in and things like that. And lots of kids are not going to go more than a high school education. They need to be a good laborer and stuff, but know how to do this and how to live. They have to know how to get out there in the world and be able to survive for themselves. And we should be teaching them that when we realize they're not going any place, but they still keep going to graduate. They graduate like anybody else. The only difference is at a different level, and we take care of them. I mean, I know it sounds stupid, but you know, and when you're going against people like the Republican Party or something, really it comes down to giving people something that they can grab onto that's different, what it really is, and not what it can be and things like that. But this, at least, seems to be like it makes more sense. You know, and also for you, it's just a matter when you're on television and saying, look, these are my ideas, but if there's any of you out there that have anything better, please come and see my people, and if we get together, and if it is better, I'll be glad to take it so you get their attention. When you're up there on television, this is how you get the television for you. Right. Because other people out there is going to say, gee, yeah, even if they're a Republican, can I really talk to him and things?
Yeah. Good. All right, let's give that a round of applause.
Well, can I sort of jump onto that a little bit and ask about, you know, what's happening with the district in terms of education related to jobs? You know, what's happening? You know, I've got 2 kids who left the area because they've got a great education, and then looking for a job here. How do we fix that? How do we, you know?
Well, you know, so to Mike's point, asking about, I think what you're getting at is how do we keep young people in the North Country? All right, we cannot afford to have our greatest export be our children. All right, and I think. And so we have to create ways in which they can make a meaningful life in and around this part of New York State. And there's a lot of good people out there who are getting after that. I've spent time with workforce development in the district, talking to them about looking to what you were talking about a moment ago. Those people who are not going to go to college, they want to come out of high school, they want that vocational training. You know, there are options and places for them to work, but they have to have that bridge. And workforce development can begin to provide some of that. Our community colleges are tailoring programs right now to meet the needs of local industry. And community colleges can be agile enough to do that if they get the resources that they need. And that's a key point. There's 2 things I look at in terms of how do you create the conditions for people in this region to find opportunity. 2 big categories. One is education, all right, which for many of us has been the way in which we moved to the level we are in life. And the second is infrastructure, which benefits all of us. It benefits our private citizens, it benefits our businesses, and it makes our society work. And we have now a culture where we have not adequately invested in either education or in infrastructure. So in very general terms, I think those are things we have to shift. We have to shift that way of thinking in our country. We have to shift that way of thinking in our state. Yeah.
What is your thinking
is crippling people's lives. Okay? It is imposing a cost on our best and our brightest who say they self-select to go to school. They get into a school, they have great hopes and great aspirations. They ideally have a great educational experience, and then they come out with this crushing debt, which they then have to pay in many cases for decades. And what it does is it prevents them from doing other things. They don't buy a house. They don't go to that next job because they're not quite sure if they're gonna, have that same pay that they had in the job that they're currently in. They don't have that upward mobility. They don't get married because they don't want to bring that kind of debt into a marriage. So how do we have to put, back to what I mentioned with Mike a moment ago, we have to put more money into education. In the 1970s, when my father began working for SUNY Plattsburgh, 75% of the cost of an education in SUNY Plattsburgh was borne by the government. The student came in and paid in general terms, about 25%. Anybody in education now and know what the proportion is? Yes.
I did speak to a SUNY administrator. He said that the state funds SUNY 18%.
Okay, so think about that. In the 70s, 75% of the cost borne. So that's an investment in education, and now we're down to 18. And so I didn't know the exact number. I'm glad you were to bring that up. But that is something that we could do, and we could address the debt that we impose on our young people. Other things, for example, we could have different debt forgiveness programs. There's one right now where they're talking about people who go and farm. If we can get young people to go and farm, produce agricultural products, there would be a debt relief or debt forgiveness program. The other is national service. Can we tie debt relief, debt forgiveness to some sort of national service? Doesn't have to be military, but a national service approach. Can we make educational debt negotiable for some of these students so that they can refinance it with remarkably low interest rates right now? And some people are locked in at 8, 9, 10, 11% interest rates on their student loans. So those are some of the ideas that I would want to work with if that was on my, yes.
So what about the idea of, instead of everyone going to college for 4 years or 6 years or whatever it is, that some people, a lot of students, they think that's the way to success, because that's what everybody does. That's just supposed to be the normal thing. What about things like apprenticeship in different trades and sort of emphasizing that as well?
Well, look at what our brothers and sisters in organized labor are doing. Okay, go down to the plumbers and steamfitters down here, the United Association, and look at their apprenticeship program. And, that's one of the strongest unions we have here in the North Country. I think many of you know Larry Bowman, right? Larry's the international head of that. And Larry's from town of Moreau, I believe. Not mistaken. Do I have that right?
Yes.
Okay, good. I'm getting it. So, that apprenticeship program is just taking over. And they are giving people skills. They're not going to college. They're not incurring a lot of debt. And then they have a lifetime of work in front of them, which allows them to build a life of reason. So it's got to be, I totally agree with you. Not everyone needs to go to college. Yes?
Do you support the Democratic platform of free college tuition at a public college and university?
In general terms, yes. I've never been a really big fan of totally free stuff. I'll tell you, my sense is that when someone invests in something, it matters more to them. So, there are models around the world in places I've lived, like in France and in Germany, where students don't pay $30,000 a year to go to school. Maybe they pay $1,500. So it's a very reasonable cost, given that is a very valuable experience they are benefiting from. So, again, I'm of that mindset, and people should know this about me, that if you want somebody to value something, having a certain self-investment in that can be valuable. But the point is, I agree with the intent of the party's platform that we have to drive costs down for our students, or else our future as a nation, as a region, is limited because they won't do things they should be doing extra saddle. I've met students in this district who are carrying $140,000 worth of college debt and did not graduate from college. So that's the worst case situation. They're not a college graduate, so they can't get that great job, and they still have to pay.
Would that more or less count with the, like, now I lost my train of thought, he wanted to talk to you.
Yes, sir.
Under the current formula, Social Security cost of living has come out for the last 3 years where there's been no increase. And seniors and disabled people and stuff have had to make do with no increase. Yet we all know the cost of living has gone up precipitously, mostly with insurance costs, with deductibles, with premiums and stuff. And what would you do to enhance and expand Social Security and give us a fair cost of living increase?
Yeah, well, and this comes right out of the Democratic platform, and we have to raise the cap. We have to put Social Security on a firm footing, so it has longevity. It's something people can depend on. It doesn't become a piggy bank for the rest of the government, and there are ways to do that are fair and equitable, but just we do not have the political will to do. And then we can come back to, that particular concern you have, which is, cost of living allowance increases. Yes, sir.
With the Social Security, for years, they increase the payment of what they, the tax or whatever you want to call it, which is what people's contributions, individual put in.
Right.
And they stopped doing that. And now they say, oh, the system's going to go bankrupt. That's garbage. All you need to do is increase the payment, as they did for most of our lives into the 60s and 70s.
Now, there are ways to fix Social Security.
The system is paid for itself, and if you have enough money coming in, then you could have money going out for the people who are.
Yeah, good point. There are ways to fix it, but again, we need the political will. We need the political courage to be able to, have legislators, have members of Congress who will put themselves out there, make tough decisions, which, may not be the most popular, but the point is there are things which we as a nation must do to guarantee our futures. Yes, sir.
Mike, with the combination of the districts in the last few years, 20 and 21st, as you know better than we do, vast areas for you to cover. You have strong roots in Clinton County. We're 90-some days till election. Question for you or your campaign manager: will we be able to see you 7 or 8 times in the greater Glens Falls area?
Oh, without a doubt.
Absolutely.
Without a doubt. I take all my cues from Lynn.
Absolutely.
So, no, without a doubt. Let me just tell you, I have driven somewhere on the order of, in the last 24 hours, 300 miles, and in the last 24 hours, this is my 4th event, okay? So the pace is picking up. I've been in a very tough business for my career, all right? One where we had chaos and we had uncertainty, but we did our level best to control the chaos and control the uncertainty. So I think that prepares me pretty well for politics. And yes, the answer to your question is yes. All right, a question from somebody who's less than, how old are you?
I'm 19.
There we go, less than 20.
I'll ask a question that a lot of people might be thinking of, but I'm sure still want to hear your answer. What's your opinion of how the Trans-Pacific Partnership would affect the North Country?
Yeah. So the Trans-Pacific Partnership, I think you all know I've come out against that, and we've been talking a lot about that in recent days. In fact, Elise Stefanik signed a letter which went to the president requesting fast-track authority to move this more quickly and easily through Congress. And we brought it up as an issue, and in fact, Elise Stefanik has changed her position on it this week. So we see that as taking the initiative and driving the agenda in this race. My view of that is it would be bad for the people who live and work in the North Country, and that it's not that I don't like trade or don't think that trade is an important part of the modern world, but we must have trade agreements which not only benefit our multinational corporations and their shareholders, but which benefit people who work in this country. If we lose that balance, already the playing field is not level. If it gets any more out of balance, we stand to lose a lot as people who live here and as a nation going forward. All right, the bottom line of our multinational corporations is important, but it doesn't outweigh the interests of the American middle class. So,
I would give
Mike.
them
yes.
I think it behooves the members of the press who are here to report the distinguishing factors that Colonel Derrick brings with Elise Stefanik's vote. And as a chair in this area, I would ask that those distinguishing points be noted in the coverage. Thank you.
This is a great editorial comment. Thank you. Yes.
One of those distinguishing points is acid rain. Astonishing, she has in effect voted to increase acid rain up here. You discussed this in the past. I think it's a major issue for you.
Well, it's absolutely huge. And you know, some of you may have gotten in your mailboxes yesterday a mailer from Elise Stefanik which lists her achievements in office. And one of the bullets in there says, do you have it there?
Got it for you.
It is.
They're still mailing him, I don't know why.
All right. I'm a constituent, people, I'm a constituent. I'm supposed to get this.
I got it.
Protecting our North Country treasures. Congresswoman Stefanik has led efforts to protect our North Country environmental treasures. That's what it says right here. What the League of Conservation Voters said about her is that there are 27 members of Congress from New York State, and she is 26th of 27 in terms of protecting the environment. All right, so she's second from worst. 9% rating out of 100 in terms of caring for the environment, which is absolutely in opposition to what you read on this piece of paper. So this is where we get into what Elise Stefanik says or writes and what Elise Stefanik does. She has consistently, I'm going to get pissed off again, consistently votes against our environment. And if we don't have our environment in this region, especially when we go to the north here, places like Lake George, places like Lake Luzerne, we are going to lose that which sets us apart from the rest of this state. Okay, we are special because we have the Adirondack Park here. We're not quite in it right here, but it's just up the road. We have Lake George, which is the lake with the second greatest clarity in the United States. Number one is Lake Tahoe. Number two is Lake George. Think about that. And she has voted for acid rain. We in the North Country have fought that battle for the last 30 years. When I was a kid, and I went fishing in Lake Champlain, I could catch a string of perch and I could eat the whole string in a given day. How many can I eat now? Anybody know? One a month. All right? And why can't I eat those perch? Because of bioaccumulated mercury in the flesh of that fish. That is what comes from acid rain. We have 50 years of accumulated mercury in our waters, in our soils, in our forests. Even if we stopped right now, it would take 50 years for all of that to work its way through the system. How can she vote to increase the amount of acid rain in this region and reverse the progress we've made? It is absolutely unconscionable. And I'll stop before Yes.
So we talked a lot about education earlier, and we've also talked a lot about distinguishing factors between yourself and Congresswoman. I'm curious then, why do you think she was recently endorsed by the biggest teachers union in the state?
Yeah, it's a good question. So that came out yesterday, and it is something where, you know, Kathy and I have 4 kids. We've put them through public schools. So 4 times 12, what is that? Something like 48. 48 years of public school, or pretty close. We moved all over the place, somewhere in some private schools here and there. But the point is, I have the greatest respect for teachers, the greatest respect for NYSET. They made a decision, I'm not sure why, but my point is that as I run this campaign, as I'm elected to Congress, I will remain committed to education. I will remain committed to the teachers of New York State, because that's one of our pathways forward. Right? And I can't speak for NYSET. You would have to ask NYSET that yourself. I find that some of the votes that Elise Stefanik has taken are contrary to the best interests of education for the people who live in this district. And I would say her vote to slash future funding for Pell Grants, which is the way in which our poorest students have access to higher education. So again, I'll leave it at that. All right, I'm going to take these two, and then let's stop right there. Yes, ma'am.
Every male in my family has served in the military, so I'm not against guns, but I am for gun control. And I think it's out of hand in the United States because we have too many killings going on. What is your position? How can both parties take on the NRA, the United States of the NRA? They seem to be in power.
It's an excellent question. Somewhere on the order of 30,000 people are killed accidentally or deliberately with guns in this country per year. So it has become a public health crisis. And we as a nation, we need to have people in Congress who are willing to deal with the issue. Right now, they are not. We can't even fund in Congress the ability to study through the National Institute of Health or other governmental organizations the problem itself. We can't even define the problem right now. You're right, the NRA has an outsized voice in terms of absolutely no restrictions on firearms in this country. The NRA has set aside its safety mission, which it used to do, and its training mission. Those are important components of what the NRA used to do that it has stepped aside and no longer does effectively. I'm a gun owner. I've been an infantry officer for 28 years. I understand weapons. I've probably put more rounds through a weapon than anybody in this room. And yet, the voices in the middle, the voices of responsible, reasonable gun owners who are just as outraged as you are, has been lost in this debate. And we have screaming across the middle, and no one meets in the middle to put common sense initial steps into place. How is it that somebody who's on the terrorist watch list right now in this country can buy a weapon? Those are the incremental early steps that I would fight for so that we can begin to fix the problem that we have and address what I consider to be a public health crisis. Yes, sir.
Mike, you asked how that can happen. It happens because Elise Stefanik received, I believe, it's $7,700 from the NRA. And I was wondering if maybe if I offered her $10,000, we'd get her. I'd do it if she's Fisher.
Probably not something I should know about. I was going to say that. Yes.
Mike, we have an issue, and I know it's in Glens Falls, it's all over the North Country, of banks hiding and not being responsible for abandoned homes. Right? What is your feeling? What is your take? What kind of response? What direction would you like to see?
So they're assets that they're just going to abandon and not do anything about. They still have them on the books.
Yeah, they're on the books. They're on the street fronts. They're all over the Northeast.
Yeah.
And the banks won't come forward. They won't identify that they own these properties. You either move them on to people who can live with them, or allow them to be taken down so the property can be resold.
I'm not. I would have to look at the problem in detail, but if it's something that the banks should be doing and are not doing, that's something that obviously, I don't know if it's going to be a federal issue or a state level issue, but that's something where government can step in and make a difference. Because when that home just, it becomes, what do we call them in Watertown? They call them zombie properties. Do we use that term here in Glens Falls? Yeah. See, Watertown has its own culture. I just want to make sure. So zombie properties, and it drags everybody down. It becomes, magnets for crime. They become magnets for drugs. Property levels, property prices go down, tax bases shrink. So I would support it.
Well, Patrick and I drive by one every morning. right in front of our house.
Okay.
So it's something we share personally, but I know it's all across the Northeast.
Well, listen, I'm gonna end it there because I know you all have busy days. Patrick, you wanna tell us anything else we're doing this morning?